The use of flexible weapons crosses many cultures and stretches back for even thousands of years. The most common of these weapons are the nunchucks, made famous originally by Bruce Lee. Another historic weapon, the bola, was used by the Chinese, the Alaskan Inuits, and the South American Indians. Even the modern-day toy, the yo-yo, is fabled to be based off of the ancient Chinese rope dart or the Meteor Hammer. In this video, Jeremy's going to show you some basic techniques that can be used with most flexible weapons. I wanted to just first of all talk about the features of my Meteor Hammer, variation of a rope dart. Normally, if it was a rope dart, it would have a blade on the end of this, but this was a hammer. So in real life, if this was a battle weapon, would be a piece of bronze or some very heavy metal tied to the end of this rope. This so happens to be a tennis ball that I filled with fishing weights because I wanted some good heft to it, and then I tied it in a monkey's fist. And this one, it's seen some better days. I've been using this many years, so it's about time for me to make a new one. So if you guys are interested in seeing a video on that, then leave a comment down below. When I make a new one, I might go ahead and do that for you. But you'll see just below the hammer are these scarves. And what that's meant to do is kind of hide the hammer. So it makes it harder for the eye to see it and just obscures it some. Besides obscuring the hammer, the other purpose of the scarf is, of course, it looks beautiful as it flies behind, it's visually pleasing. Also, with that, it creates a visual distraction. So my eyes are drawn more to this than this, which is a lot of times how I get my ties to actually work. And then I chose these colors, one a lighter red, another one a little bit darker red. To me, that kind of was the visual representation of fire. So it looks like a meteor when it's flying around, but then also when I really get this moving, you can hear it gives that very pleasing sound that almost sounds like fire burning. The length of the rope, if I fold this in half and I hold it side to side, that's basically my height from the fingertip to fingertip. You know, in the future, I might make this a little bit longer, but this is a pretty good length. Ends up being probably about 11 feet long by the time you're done. And on the very end, I have weaved in this loop. And so my hand can simply pass through that loop and I can hold on to it really well. If I wanted this to be a little shorter or I wanted to be more secure, I can just weave the end, and this is normally how I do it. My hand goes through and now it's nice and attached to me. I don't even have to hold that end of the rope anymore. Now, like the nunchaku, you'll notice that the rope dart is also considered a chain weapon. That's a weapon on the end of a chain. And so you're going to realize that a lot of these techniques are the same as the nunchaku, which actually originally comes from the Philippines. So to me, it's pretty amazing that we can take these Kali stick fighting skills, apply it to just about any weapon to figure out how it works. For instance, at Purple Belt, we just first start off learning how to do circles and figure eights. So if I let this hang to my side, usually my hand held about hip level, and I let the end dangle just above the floor, and I'll step forward with that foot, and you can see how I'm just starting to get this to swing, and then all of a sudden I'm going to change this to a downward circle. And since this is on the outside of my foot, it's considered an outside circle. I can now change that to be the inside of my body. It's inside that foot, and so now that's a downward circle. And if I combine outside and inside, that's where I get my figure eight. Now, I can also, from this position, turn around without stopping. I have an upward circle. I can step forward. I've changed this downward to an upward, so a lot of that just depends on the direction I'm facing. But I should be comfortable with also swinging upward outside, upward inside, upward figure 8. You'll notice most of those techniques are on the vertical axis. The other part of our kali would be what we call our helicopter, or the abanico, right over the top of the head. And so with this rope, I can easily get this going one direction. I would stop it off my body. I could get it going the other direction. And you can see how a lot of that is very similar to how you'd use your nunchaku, bouncing it off your body to change directions. Which to me, that represents when I hit somebody, especially if I'm hitting them on the side, it's going to bounce back in this horizontal direction. And at that point, if I hit somebody and it bounces off, I'm going to need to know how to control that to where, boom, I can change it to whatever direction I want.
One advantage of a horizontal circle is its ability to wrap up your opponent's weapon or one of their limbs.
Once you're comfortable doing all your circles and figure 8s, the other thing to realize is I can very easily change the diameter of my circle. So normally out here, I have this very big circle. If my opponent's far away from me, I'll be able to hit them. But if all of a sudden they move in closer or I need to move faster, I can change the size of my circle just by now adding my elbow or my shoulder to it. And all I did is I came from this downward circle. As it was coming down, I would take my opposite elbow across and then pull it down. I can use that same thing even if I put my neck in there. See, it's coming downward. I can put my neck in there, boom, and I've changed to my opposite direction. I can do that with my foot. All of a sudden it's coming down, I put my foot in it, there was off of my knee. When we're using our body parts to change the length of the rope, the main advantage is not only does it adjust the distance that I'm fighting from, but as the rope goes from a long rope to a shorter rope, you'll notice it goes faster. Now I can actually shrink this all the way up to the point where it kind of looks like I'm fighting with nunchaku, right? It's pretty much that close a distance that I can be fighting from if I needed to. From here even, all of a sudden I'll face this way. You might be able to see this good. From the short distance to a long, that's how I start to create my throws. The next thing I wanted to talk about was throwing the rope dart, or in this case, the Meteor Hammer. Now, if it's a rope dart, that was originally its purpose, is to be able to get it going in a circle really fast, and now I can fling it at a really high rate of speed. It was meant for piercing my opponent, but then I can pull the rope and I got my dart back again. So the easiest way to practice this is very similar to how we started our circles, is I'm just going to have the rope here swinging to the side. I'm getting my body behind it, right? I'm leaning forward and leaning back with it. And then at one point as I come forward, I'm going to fling it and point at my target. And you'll see that that's directly where they came out to. To me, that is the main advantage of these vertical circles, as I get a chance to line up where my target's at, and then boom, it's going to go right out to it. Horizontally, it's a little bit harder. So now when I go to pull this in, I'll show you. I'm going to pull it to my hip, back to my hand, and then you see once I come back to my hip, this is the length I had. Now in this case, I'm starting to do this downward circle. Downward circle, it's as I hit the top of this circle, I'm going to fling it forward. In that case, I caught it. I could fling it forward, boom, let it land, draw it in, and in this case, I might rock it, change it to the upper circle. The upper circle I found is easier than the downward circle. From once it hits the bottom and starts moving forward, I fling it forward. In this case, I pulled it back with one pull and got it back going to a downward circle. And then I can throw it. Boom. Oh, I hit my ceiling. Okay, I stopped the circle, I switched directions, and then boom, I throw it. I just wanted to show you from the side how I retrieved my dart after throwing it. So if I tried to do this slow and easy, right? I can do this from my upward circle. I'm going to fling it out, and then I pull it back. And that's how that first retrieval happened, right? Back to here, and then there's another little hand change that'll happen. When I fling it here, I'll grab it and pull one more time, and now I've got that loop. I'll change directions, try that again. So I'm going upward, I'm gonna fling it, pull it back, I re-grab it, and now I'm down my downward circle. Switch it back to upward, fling it, pull it back, re-grab, down my downward circle. This is a good way to just continue to practice one after another. You'll see when I go to throw, I get my whole body going with it and I pull it back. I'm swinging it forward and then back. So practice that until you get comfortable with it. Downward is more difficult, but again, it's just the opposite. As I was flinging it forward, it was when the ball came to the bottom of the circle, that's when I flung it forward. When I'm doing a downward circle, it's the same thing. When it hits the top of the circle, I'm now going to flick it forward. So you can see how that went directly forward, but also it's going down to the floor. So when I'm doing my downward circle and I throw it out, I'm going to have to retrieve it as it hits the target. Boom. And I can just practice that downward circle, throw it, retrieve it. When you're comfortable with throwing your rope dart normally, now we can get used to using different body parts, just like our figure eights, throwing off my elbows, throwing off my feet, throwing off my neck. So the foot's a pretty easy one. If I get this doing a downward circle, and what I do is I hit this with an Hapkido, we call that a lower cross kick. And you see how that wanted to wrap around my foot. So it's interesting because you can feel the momentum of that rope go from down back to forward. And so as I feel that rope go down to back and start going forward, I add a flick of my toe, and it's going to fling it right at my opponent. And I'm pointing my toe at the target that I want to hit. So in this case, I'm going to switch my feet. This foot's going to be forward. I catch it in my foot, fling it forward, and then I retrieve it same way I was doing before. I fling it forward, pull it back, and retrieve it off of my foot, and then I fling it. That's how you do that throw. I could do the same thing with my elbow. I'm doing this outside circle. I can put my elbow out, throw my elbow forward, and then that gets the rope traveling in that direction. There's one last really cool throw I wanted to show you guys, and that's throwing off the neck. This one is a challenge to learn. It's got some pieces to it, so it makes it challenging, which is why I like it so much. But also it's got that danger factor. It's a little scary, right? So this is going to be coming off this upward circle. At a certain point, I'm going to be passing this around my neck, catching it with my finger, and as I fling it back, it's flying off of my neck to make that strike happen. So if I try to slow this down a little bit, one thing that you'll see is as I'm doing this circle, when I go to pass it, I pass this part of the rope right here next to my neck. And I want this coming right down over my shoulder. At that point, I do this quick hand change from here to here. And as I do that hand change, I stick my finger out, so as this comes, I'm hooking that rope with this finger. Upward circle, I pass it over my neck, I catch that finger, boom, throw it off the neck. To me, the most important part about the concept of throwing with this weapon is once you get that throw down, you should be able to retrieve that throw. Remember, if I throw my weapon at my opponent, I don't want him to have it. I've got to get it back myself. So for example, if I'm doing this neck throw, I've got to be able to retrieve it, throw it with another part of my body. Until one of them hits and strikes him down, my opponent's out. Just like I talked about earlier in the video, one of the advantages of a weapon that's 12 feet of rope is the fact that you can use it to tie up your opponent and gain control of their weapon or gain control of their body. But what happens if you get tied up in that long length of rope? Or are there maybe instances you would want to on purpose wrap yourself with that rope. We're going to unpack more of those details in the next video.
As with any skill, it takes practice and proper training to get good at it. So make sure you look for a good school in your area. If you're in Southern Oregon, contact us for our locations and times. Thanks for watching our video. If you enjoyed it, like it and make sure to share that with a friend. Click the subscribe button and then hit that notification bell so you can catch our next exciting video.